Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I recently moved to Germany from the US for work, and let me tell you, the culture shock of using public transportation has been real. Back home, I drove everywhere. Here, I'm learning to navigate the train system, which would normally be great if it weren't for the current situation. See, the government introduced this amazing but chaotic thing, a €9 monthly ticket that lets you ride any public transport across all of Germany. Sounds great, right? Well, it is, except now the trains are absolutely packed, constantly delayed, and sometimes just straight up cancelled. I'm a pretty tall woman, and I'll admit I'm on the heavier side. Usually this makes me self-conscious, but today it actually came in handy. I was heading home after a long day at work when my first train got cancelled. The next one was, predictably, overcrowded. I managed to squeeze in near the doors, standing shoulder to shoulder with other passengers. There was literally no space to move. We were approaching the main station where most people typically get off. About 5 minutes before arrival, I noticed some commotion in the middle of the car. A woman and her son, probably around 12, were shoving their way through the crowd, apparently determined to reach the doors first. I had my earbuds in but turned down the volume when I saw people getting visibly annoyed by this pair. The woman was pushing people aside while her kid tried to squeeze through any gap he could find. The nice gentleman standing next to me seemed equally irritated by their behavior. When they reached us, things got ugly. Instead of asking politely to pass, the woman, let's call her Karen, encouraged her son to force his way through. The kid started pushing against me and then had the nerve to put his hands on my bottom and hips, trying to squeeze past. When that didn't work, he started pushing against my stomach. I tried to tell the kid to stop groping random strangers, attempting to explain that everyone needed to get off at this stop. But before I could finish, Karen started screaming at me for accusing her son. I pointed out that her son had been inappropriately touching me and asked how she'd feel if someone did that to her. She just called me a stubborn cow and demanded I move aside. I explained that everyone needed to get off at this stop and there was no need to push through everybody. I also pointed out that there was literally nowhere for me to move to. Karen then spotted my earbuds and accused me of not hearing them because of my music. I told her my music was turned off and I could hear perfectly fine. The gentleman next to me backed me up, confirming they never asked anyone to move. Karen then insisted they needed to get off first. When I asked why, she rudely said it was none of my business. I explained that unless she had a medical emergency or a connecting train, there was no reason for anyone to move aside for her. Her son tried pushing against me again, more aggressively this time. I grabbed his wrist and warned him to stop touching me. This made Karen explode with rage, calling me a fat witch and telling me not to touch her precious child. The gentleman next to me told her to calm down and wait like everyone else, adding that she needed to control her disrespectful kid. Other passengers were watching now, clearly annoyed with Karen and her son. Then Karen tried to physically force her way between me and the gentleman, digging her nails into my shoulder. The gentleman pushed her back, and I grabbed her wrist tightly, telling her to wait her turn. Karen completely lost it. She started screaming about being assaulted, begging other passengers to help her. Instead, everyone started yelling at her to shut up and stop being entitled. When we finally reached the station, the gentleman and I stayed put, turning sideways to let others off first. Karen started hitting our shoulders with her fists. Other passengers quickly intervened. And here's where it gets good. 2 off-duty police officers who had been watching the whole thing approached. They'd seen everything, from her kid's inappropriate touching to her physical assault. They took statements from multiple witnesses while Karen tried to run away. She didn't get far, slipped on the platform and face-planted right in front of everyone. She and her son both got banned from that train line for 6 months, and I pressed charges for assault. She eventually had to pay a hefty fine and attend mandatory anger management classes. I've had problems with my right foot for as long as I can remember. When I was 8, I twisted it badly during a soccer game, and instead of letting it heal properly, I kept playing through the pain because I loved the sport so much. That decision came back to haunt me when I was 10, as my weakened ankle gave out during a simple jump, leading to a nasty fracture. The doctors weren't happy when they saw the previous damage that hadn't healed properly. They told my mom I'd need to wear a medical boot for several months, possibly on and off for even longer depending on how well it healed. Being 10, I was actually excited when they let me pick out a boot with a cute giraffe pattern on it. It made the whole situation feel less scary. The boot became my constant companion. I had to wear it to school during outdoor activities, basically anywhere I went. Most kids were understanding and some even thought the giraffe pattern was cool, but wearing it was uncomfortable, especially during hot days when my foot would get sweaty and start to ache. One Saturday afternoon, my mom took me and my little brother to McDonald's. She ran into some work friends there and asked if we wanted to play in the playground area while she caught up with them. My brother, being 6 and full of energy, immediately ran off to climb through the tubes and slides. I made my way to the playground area and sat down in one of the chairs. Even though I couldn't play, I enjoyed watching my brother have fun. After about 20 minutes, my foot started throbbing from being confined in the boot all day. Since I was sitting down and wouldn't be walking around, I carefully undid the Velcro straps and slipped my foot out to give it some air. That's when they walked in. A woman and her son who looked about 7 or 8. They ordered their food and sat at a table near the playground. I noticed the kid staring at my boot almost immediately, but I didn't think much of it. It did have a pretty cool giraffe on it after all. While they were eating, I overheard the kid whispering to his mom that he wanted my boot because it had a giraffe on it. His mom simply told him to go ahead and take it. The kid started circling around my table like a shark sizing up its prey. Before I could react, he darted forward, grabbed my boot, and ran back to his mother. I watched in horror as he started forcing his foot into my medical boot, yanking at the Velcro straps so hard I thought they would tear. I politely asked him to give my boot back, but the kid completely ignored me. What was worse, his mother was sitting there, nodding approvingly at his behavior. I had no choice but to stand up, using the tables for support, and hop over to their table. I tried asking again, starting to explain about my fractured foot, but the mother cut me off. She rudely told me that her son just wanted to look at the boot and claimed I seemed fine without it. When I insisted that I needed it to walk properly, she held her hand up in my face and dismissed me, saying it was just a boot and I should stop whining. I felt my face getting hot with anger. Without thinking twice, I reached over and snatched my boot back from her son. The kid immediately started crying to his mom about me taking away the boot he wanted. His mother demanded I give the boot back to her son right away. The commotion caught my mom's attention and she rushed over from her friend's table. When she asked what was happening, I quickly explained while the kid continued wailing about wanting my boot. My mom was shocked, asking the woman if she was seriously allowing her child to take someone else's medical equipment. The other mother just screamed at us to give her son the boot back. My mom refused, telling her that her son needed to learn he couldn't just take things that didn't belong to him. The woman actually lunged at my mom with her hand raised to strike her. But my mom, who had taken self-defense classes after my dad left us, was ready. She blocked the woman's arm and delivered a perfect slap across her face, the sound echoing through the playground area. The woman stood there, mouth agape, hand on her reddening cheek. The restaurant had gone completely silent. The manager came running over to ask what was happening. My mom explained how the woman's son had stolen my medical boot and how the woman had tried to assault her when we wouldn't let them keep it. The woman started sputtering excuses, but the manager had already seen the security footage on the cameras. The manager told the woman to leave immediately and not come back to this location. She grabbed her still crying son and stormed toward the exit, yelling threats about lawsuits and calling the police. The manager just laughed and pointed out that the police would love to see the footage of her attempting to assault someone and stealing medical equipment from a child. A few regulars who witnessed the whole thing started clapping as she left. One elderly couple even bought my brother and me ice cream cones. The manager gave my mom a gift card and apologized for the incident. My foot eventually healed properly after several more months of wearing the boot, though I still need to be careful with it. and I later found out that the woman actually did try to file a police report, but quickly withdrew it when she was told there was video evidence of the entire incident. After losing my job during the economic downturn last year, I had to downsize pretty much everything in my life. Sold my car, moved to a smaller place, and bought a used motorcycle to get around. It wasn't exactly living the dream, but it got me to my new job at the warehouse across town, which was all that mattered. The bike isn't anything special, just a basic commuter motorcycle that gets decent gas mileage. The previous owner had maintained it well enough, and despite a few scratches here and there, it was reliable. My new place is decent, but like most urban areas, parking is at a premium. Thankfully, the city installed these motorcycle anchors on the street, and I managed to snag a spot right where I could keep an eye on it from my porch. I'm not usually paranoid, but after having my last bike stolen from my old apartment complex, I wasn't taking any chances. I invested in a heavy-duty chain lock and set up a security camera on my porch. My neighbors probably thought I was overdoing it, but that camera turned out to be worth every penny. Last Tuesday night, I was checking the footage before heading to bed, just my usual routine, when I noticed something strange. My neighbor from 3 houses down was trying to park his SUV, and what I saw made my blood boil. First, he reversed into my bike. Okay, accidents happen, right? But then this guy actually gets out and tries to move my locked motorcycle out of the designated motorcycle bay. When that doesn't work, he gets back in his car and, I kid you not, deliberately reverses into it again, knocking it completely over. As if that wasn't bad enough, he then backs up onto my bike. The footage shows him getting out, looking around like a guilty teenager, and then struggling to lift my bike back up. He props it against the anchor like nothing happened and just walks away. The next morning I go out to head to work and immediately notice my bike's scratched up and the left mirror is completely broken off. His SUV is parked right next to it, probably thinking he's so clever. I checked my camera footage again just to be sure, and yep, there it is in full clarity. I walked over to his house and knocked on the door. When he answered, I tried to keep things civil. I calmly explained that I had seen him hitting my bike on camera and needed his insurance details to cover the damage. His reaction was immediate. His face switched from confusion to anger in seconds. He aggressively denied hitting anything at all. I attempted to reason with him, explaining that I had everything on camera and just needed his insurance information to fix my mirror. He got even more worked up, demanding to know about the camera and claiming it was illegal to have cameras on the street. When I explained the camera was on my property and asked him to calm down, he only got more agitated, yelling that I was the one making accusations. I tried one more time to handle things peacefully, explaining that this was all recorded and technically a crime since he left the scene. I warned him that I'd have to involve the police if we couldn't handle this civilly. That really set him off. He started ranting about how the police wouldn't care about a stupid motorcycle and threatened to move his car so I'd have no proof. He even threw in that only losers ride motorcycles. That's when I got what I'll admit was a slightly petty idea. While he was ranting, I went to my bike, unwrapped my heavy chain, and very carefully wound it around his SUV's front wheel. Click went the lock. When I returned to his door and brought up the insurance details again, he immediately threatened to call the police. I told him that I'd already beaten him to it, and they were on their way. The color drained from his face instantly. He quickly changed his tune, frantically offering to provide his insurance information. I explained it was too late. He hadn't reported the accident last night, which was illegal, and if he didn't report it separately, he'd be in even more trouble. After he finally calmed down and stopped making threats, I did remove the lock. We had a somewhat civil conversation, shook hands, and I left. What he doesn't know is that I really did file a police report with full video evidence, his vehicle details, and his address. I just didn't tell him that part. The police called me yesterday. Turns out my neighbor never reported the accident, just like I predicted. They're charging him with leaving the scene of an accident, failure to report, and criminal damage. Also, my insurance company loved the video evidence, and they're going after him for full compensation. They're also pushing for his insurance rates to go up due to his reckless behavior. I've been working in security for most of my adult life. Started right after college when I realized my business degree wasn't going to land me my dream job right away. 15 years in, and I actually grew to love it. The night shifts suited me. I'm a natural night owl, and airports are fascinating places when the world is sleeping. I was working for Reliance Security at the time, assigned to the local airport. The job was straightforward but demanding. 12-hour night shifts of constant vigilance, endless patrols, and dealing with the occasional drunk traveler who thought sleeping on the terminal floor was a good idea. This one morning I was finishing up my shift. It had been a busy night with 3 delayed flights and a missing luggage situation that took hours to sort out. My feet were killing me, and all I could think about was grabbing something to eat before heading home to crash. There was a supermarket on my route home, one of those big Tesco stores that had everything under the sun. I knew they opened early and I figured I'd grab a quick sandwich before heading to bed. I was still in my work uniform but had thrown on my gray jacket over it since I was technically off duty. The store was quiet when I walked in, just a few early morning shoppers getting their essentials. I grabbed a basket and made my way to the sandwich section, my tired brain trying to decide between egg mayo or chicken and bacon. That's when I heard it. Someone called out, "Excuse me," but I didn't pay attention at first. Why would I? I was just another customer. But then suddenly my basket went flying out of my hand, clattering across the floor. I found myself staring into the reddened face of a man who looked like he was about to burst a blood vessel. The store manager started screaming at me, saying he wasn't paying me to shop and demanding that I get to the front of the store right away. I was so exhausted that my brain took a few seconds to process what was happening, and I could only manage to ask him what he meant. He continued yelling, telling me that the store had been open for customers for 30 minutes, and that I hadn't been at my position once, and now he'd caught me buying snacks. That's when it clicked. This human tomato was the store manager, and he thought I was his security guard who'd gone AWOL. I explained to him that while I knew the store was open to customers because I was one, and that although I worked for Reliance Security, I wasn't his guard and had just finished my shift at the airport. The transformation was immediate and hilarious. His face went from tomato red to ghost white in seconds. His aggressive stance deflated like a popped balloon. He started stammering apologies, offering to help me in any way he could, and suggesting he could get someone to assist me with my shopping. I looked at my fallen basket, then back at him. A deliciously petty idea formed in my tired mind. I told him that since he knocked my basket away, I would appreciate some help carrying it, but I wanted him personally to do it, not one of his staff. He quickly agreed, practically falling over himself to help. What was going to be a quick sandwich run turned into a full shopping expedition. I spent the next 30 minutes going up and down every single aisle, taking my sweet time examining products I had no intention of buying. The manager followed me like a repentant shadow, carrying my basket that slowly filled with items. I would ask him to hold up various items so I could read the ingredients, only to tell him to put them back before moving to check the next aisle. By the time we reached the checkout, the manager's arms were shaking from carrying the basket, and his pristine suit was wrinkled from reaching for items on both high and low shelves. I ended up buying the sandwich I originally came for, plus a few snacks. Might as well make the trip worth it. When I was leaving, I reminded him that his actual security guard was probably wondering where they were supposed to be stationed, and suggested he check on that instead of assaulting customers. He meekly apologized again. I added one final piece of advice, telling him he might want to work on his management style, pointing out that slapping things out of people's hands wasn't exactly professional, even if they were his employees. I walked out of there with my sandwich and snacks, exhausted but satisfied. The next time I visited that store a few weeks later, I noticed the manager practically running in the opposite direction when he saw me. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.